Hi guys, in my last two videos I talked about the fact that was it possible to convert your visitor's visa to a work permit. And you know what, I just talked about a lot of things in that video, and after looking at things I felt like, oh, you know what, why not just also let you guys know that there's also a possibility of converting your work visitor's visa to a study permit. If this video is something you're interested in, please stay tuned and don't go anywhere. So hi guys, my name is Suleeha and I am a Nigerian YouTuber residing in Ontario, Canada. My YouTube content spins from lifestyle, random vlogs, and of course the most popular one, immigration talks, DIY immigration to Canada. If my content is your type of content, please don't forget to subscribe if you are just stumbling on my channel for the first time. And if you're a returning subscriber, you know how we do this. Always ready to bring forth informative information to you guys. So now to the topic of today. Is it possible to be able to apply for a study permit while you are visiting Canada? So you might, you have a visitor's visa, you come to Canada, and then you like the old place, you feel like, I don't want to go back now. Is there a way, or is there a possibility of me staying and not going back to the country? And don't forget that usually when you're on a visitor's visa, the validity that you can stay in Canada is just for 6 months and nothing more, unless you are extending further. So is there a possibility of doing that? If you ask me, I would say yes. There is certainly a legal way of converting your visitor's visa and applying for a study visa to remain in Canada. You do not need to go back to your home country. Everything would be done right here while you are visiting Canada. And in today's video, I'm just going to explain how it works, how it operates, the step-by-step guide that you can take in doing that, and finally just making sure that all of the due processes as it relates to applying for a study permit while you're on a visit in Canada. I would be explaining that in this new video. And in this same video, I would be telling you the concept of flag polling, in the sense that I would explain to you, in the event that your study permit is granted, what is the next step that you should take to make sure that you are stamped into Canada again. So don't go anywhere, stay tuned. So the first thing that I'm going to be talking about is the category of people that can apply for, a study permit after entering into Canada. The Immigration Refugee Protection Regulation, that is like an act, like a law, pretty much a regulation that is guiding most of the things that IRCC or immigration does. On that regulation, it listed several types of people that can apply for a study permit when in Canada. But I just want to say that not all of that really concerns this video. But the one that really concerns this video is the one that says that foreign nationals can apply for, I'm just going to quote that word for word as it is, so I don't make a mistake. It says that foreign nationals can apply for a study permit when in Canada, and the applicant must have completed a course or a program of study that is a prerequisite to their enrolling at a designated learning institution. I'm going to talk about what a designated learning institution is, but that's just the one that really matters in terms of the video that I'm making today. And yes, some of the institution that you would be applying for would tell you that you have to meet up to this. At least you have to do a course for 2 months or 4 months before you can then apply to get a course. But then not all of them require you to have done a prerequisite in their university or their colleges before you can then apply to study for a full year. So just know that at the back of your mind that it's not all schools that really request for a prerequisite before a course. Once you've proved to the school that you qualify, you've submitted all the documents that you should, once your admission is granted, then you can go ahead to apply for your study permit online. Also, it is very important that I mention the fact that there are some people that are exempted from applying for a study permit at all. And those people are the people that, they are coming to Canada to study, but the course of study that they are coming to Canada to do is less than 6 months or 6 months at most. So those kind of people do not need a study permit to come into Canada to study, because their course of program is just less than 6 months, which is still within the purview of having to be in the country for 6 months. Also, from the numerous announcements of the Canadian government also brought up an initiative that, people that are on a work permit can also now go to school full-time. They do not need to apply for another visa to be able to, study in a college. So as long as you have a work permit, and you can apply to a DLI to, study and then continue your work while you're studying. This is still a new initiative. I don't know if it's already in work, but it was recently announced that the government would be allowing people that have a valid work permit to be able to, study while working. This is also one of the things that was listed in the regulation that I mentioned earlier, to the fact that if you have a valid work permit, you should be able to, apply for a study permit. But that seems not to be the case anymore. While you're on a work permit, you don't need to apply for a study permit to be able to study. Just approach a DLI, submit your document, and get an admission from that school. I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is the conditions or the due process that you need to follow for you to be able to apply for a study permit in Canada while visiting. And the first and foremost is the fact that applicant must have a valid visitor's visa. So you must have a valid visitor's visa. That's the first thing. You must be able to come to Canada legally as a visitor. And the second thing is that applicant must have gotten an admission from a DLI. That's a designated learning institution. And I'm going to explain briefly what a DLI is. Just to briefly explain, a designated learning institute, that's a DLI, they comprise of schools, universities, and colleges who can serve as hosts to students coming from, international students coming from Canada. And this, colleges, unis, and institutions, they must have been approved and accepted as a DLI by the provincial government. So basically, they must have been accepted to be able to, host students in the school. And also after the student is done with school, they can also proceed to, be able to give them a postgraduate work permit to be able to stay in the country. Not all DLIs, are offer postgraduate work permit. It is up to you to be able to check on the list of the institutions and see the ones that offer postgraduate work permit. I'm going to be putting the link in the description box so that you can take a look of all the schools, colleges, institutions that are DLIs and the ones that also offer postgraduate work permit. So if you are coming to Canada on a visit and you have the intention to stay back while applying for a study permit, you must make sure that the school is a DLI, and at the end of the day, they can also offer you postgraduate work permit. Also very important to say that even an ordinary Google search, if you check on Google, just put it on Google DLI, and for Canada, it would pop up a list for you to be able to see the list of schools that you can apply to that are DLI. Like I said the other time, it is not all schools that offer postgraduate work permit. And what this means is that you cannot come to this country, pay almost $20,000 for a course, and then come to this country after 1 year, you do not have a chance to stay back because the school or the college or the institution that you've applied to does not offer you the range to be able to stay back in the country, which is why I advise people that have the intention of, gaining experience, trying to use this pathway as a way to remain in Canada. Always make sure that your school is a DLI institution. It's a school that when you apply to, they would be able to give you a postgraduate work permit at the end of the day. The only way that I would say that if you do not mind whether the school does not offer postgraduate work permit is when you know that you are almost getting your PR and you just want to leave the country because the time is no longer, you don't appreciate the time that you're waiting to get your passport request, and you have the money that you want to spend. Yes, you can come into the country to the school that is not of that does not offer postgraduate work permit, and at that time that when your PR is granted, you can then just finish up and then you're on your PR already. There's no problem about whether you want to stay in the country or not. So it is also very, very important for me to state that just because you are in Canada, because you're on a visit to Canada, it doesn't mean that you are going to be treated differently because you applied in Canada. No, everything still remains the same. Everything is going to be the same way that it is. Nothing is going to change. You're going to apply as an international student. But regardless of the fact that you're in Canada, you might just be lucky, but you are still going to apply as an international student because you're not a Canadian citizen. You are still going to pay the same tuition that an international student is going to pay. So that's just what I wanted to clarify. Nothing changes. In fact, the process is pretty much the same thing. You might just be lucky that you get your study permit approved while you are visiting, but every other thing remains the same. If you're applying for the visa, you still need to show proof that after you finish, you are going to go back to your home country. All of that remains the same. The only thing that is noteworthy of mentioning here is the fact that when you finish, there might be a possibility that before your 6 months elapses, you are able to get your study permit and stay back in the country. That's the only thing. And like I said earlier, it is very important that when you get a conditional acceptance, that's like when you apply to a school and you get a conditional acceptance that is telling you to fulfill a requirement, you must make sure that you fulfill all that requirement before you can apply for a study permit. Because if you do not do that, you do not get an unconditional offer that is of no conditions at all, and without that you will not be able to apply for your study permit. The next thing after you've done all of those two is for you to apply for your study permit online. You've been able to gather your documents, then you would be able to apply online to get your study permit approved, and immediately your study permit is approved, while noting that you are still within the 6 months, you can then, the next thing for you to do is proceed to, you can fly out of Canada if you choose to, if you have the money to, and you come back into Canada for your visa to be stamped again as a student, or you can flagpole. And I'm going to explain what the concept of flagpoling is soon. So those two things are just a way and a method for you to be stamped back into Canada as under a new status as a student. So just a brief summary about the steps. The first thing is you must have a visitor's visa. Second thing means you must have accepted, you must have an admission and have accepted the admission from the DLI, from a DLI institution. The third thing is once all of the documents is being sorted, you can then apply for your study permits online. And the last thing finally is once your study permit is approved, you can decide to fly out of Canada, or you can use a land border to flagpole. So I'm just gonna move on now to what flagpoling means. So, what does flag polling means? How does it operate? What do you need to go to? All of these things are the things that I'm just going to explain now. And basically, flag polling is nothing serious. It is just the process of going through a land border, going out of Canada through a land border, particularly the US-Canada land border, which is the most one that we have around. A quick Google would give you all the lists of the borders that you have in Canada, whether you're in Alberta, whether you're in Quebec, whether you are in British Columbia. I don't know, but a quick Google search will tell you all of the borders that are surrounding Canada. And I know that in Ontario, there are quite a few in Ontario as well. The Niagara one, Prescott, and some other ones like that that are very close to the US. So all you just need to do is just go to the border and just let them know that you would like to flag poll or you would like to change your status. It is very important to note that if you have a US visa, it is very, very okay for you, because at that point, you know you have a visa, you can waltz into the US and just waltz back into Canada and just let them know that you would like to change your status on that. But if you do not have a visa, you are not traveling to the United States because you do not have a visa. All you just need to do is let the border officer know that you want to flag poll, and they would direct you to the officer that would attend to you as it relates to flag polling in Canada. And it is of high importance that I tell you that when you're going for flag polling, you need to make sure that you have all your documents handy. And when I mean document, I'm talking about your passport, I am talking about the admission letter that you've gotten from your university or college, your study permit as well that has been approved. You need to also carry that along with you to the border. And of course, any other document that you know that is going to help your case when you get to the border. You shouldn't go empty-handed because you want to go and flag poll. There might be consequences, which I would be talking about later. And also, I always like to advise people that if you know that your visa is about to expire or you do not really have much time on your visa, I always do not consider flag polling, because that might also have its consequences. And then I just do not advise that. If you've received your study permit, if you still have a valid visa, so in case you are being turned back, you have an option of coming back into Canada to, to do all that is needed of you very, very well. It is very important to let you know that when you enter into the US, that is like automatically, I would say that like a refusal kind of thing, because you do not have a US visa, but you are being allowed into the country. To me, I feel like that amounts to a refusal or denied at entry or something like that. You are not allowed to come into US, and then you are being returned back to Canada. I think that's like the basic meaning of flag polling. And I think that subsequently in every visa application that you do, it is to do you well to mention that you've tried to gain entrance to the US and you were denied entry of coming into the US. And I will further continue to state that once you get to the officer that is going to be attending to you at the flag polling unit, the officer would then refer you to a CBSA officer, because CBSA officers are also always at the border for people that are coming into Canada. You know, when you're going into the US, there's a segment, and when you're coming back into Canada, there's a segment of CBSA officer. We have IRCC rules, but the CBSA officers are the ones that you meet at the borders. They are also the ones that you meet at the airport, checking your documents, seeing that everything is fine and all of that. So you meet the CBSA officer and then you present your case to the CBSA officer. The officer takes a look at everything that you have. They take a look at your document, and once they see that there seems to be like a team of success to this, then they don't have a choice than to stamp you in to come back into Canada. So they stamp you back into Canada on your new status, regardless of the fact that probably you were a visitor or you are a spouse on a work, you are a spouse that is on a visitor's visa that is willing to change to a spousal open work permit. So like I said, all of that has to be met, like the requirement has to be met. If there seems to be like something fishy or something not met, then you would not be granted access back. And like I said, those things have their consequences. And Flag polling doesn't just apply to just you converting from a visitor to a student. You can also flag poll if you've been able to change from your visitor's visa to your work permit. You can flag poll if you are extending your stay in Canada over the 6 months that is required of you. And finally, if you are a student that have been approved of your study permit, you can flag poll as well in Canada. And I was mentioning the fact that it is very important that you know that you deserve to flag poll, or if you flag poll, it is going to come out fine. Not all flag polling is going to result into a success. So that's why I made mention of the fact that make sure that you qualify and make sure that all the necessary documents are kept. These are some of the issues that you might face when you get to a border and you are deemed not required. The first thing is, not even before that, some of the issues that you might face is that there might not be an officer to attend to you. The second thing is that there might be a quota of people that they take for that day to flag poll. So it's not just you going to flag poll and then there's always someone there waiting for you to come and flag poll. Usually they always do not even like that. From what I've read from my research, they prefer you to, use the proper method of coming into Canada. The third thing is that there might be some certain days, like days of the week, days of the month, that they are open to flag polling. And like I said, a Google search will tell you what the flag polling situation is at a border. So don't just drive down without knowing what the situation is. So you need to confirm if they are open at all today to taking on people coming to flag poll, or they are not at all. The next thing also could be that the officer deems that your documents are not complete, or you are deemed as not fit to come into Canada again because they feel like your documents are not complete. Another thing that I think could also be an issue is to the fact that the officer might even deem you inadmissible, of coming into Canada. They might deem you inadmissible of coming into Canada. And in rare cases or situations, you might even be detained from coming to Canada or be issued a removal notice from Canada. So you see that it's not just for you to sit down and say you want to go and flag poll. Make sure that all your documents are deemed correct. You meet up to all the requirements that it relates to when it comes to flag polling. So like I said, those two other situations are in rare cases, but not to say that I've not seen situations where people are given removal order to leave Canada or to go online to apply, and then when they get a response, they can come back into Canada. So all of these things are what you should put in mind when you intend or you decide to go and flag poll. So while we talk about the bad side, we should also focus on the benefits, which I think that once you're successful and you are able to prove your case to the CBSA officer, you are stamped as a new student in Canada. The benefits are quite nice. If you have a spouse, your spouse can apply for a work permit not hinged on any employer. So your spouse can apply for a spousal open work permit to come to Canada and also work for any employer. In that way, you are building your husband is also your partner. That's your husband or your wife is also making money while you are studying. The second thing is that it is also a great pathway to PR, in the sense that if you've been in the pool already and you just need few points to boost yourself as a student, so to say, then that makes sense for you, because when you finish your study, while you're on your work permit, you've added your study point to your express entry or whatever program that you've applied to. Then your families, your children, they can also join you to come to Canada to study. If you have kids that are already in school, they can either get a study permit or they get a TRV, that's a visitor's visa, which is absolutely fine. They can go to school while they are here for free as well. So those are some of the benefits that comes with you converting things that you ordinarily cannot do on a visitor's visa, but you have freedom and access of doing that on a study permit with your family. Conclusion to all I've been saying is just that yes, you can apply while you are in Canada visiting our beautiful country. You can apply to study and remain longer in Canada, but just make sure that all of the due process are being followed so that you are not refused and then you have to go back to your home country to start the process all over again. And it is very important that I tell you that time is of essence. 6 months is like is gone. So anything that you need to do, if you have the intention of doing that before coming here, just make sure that you have your application watertight and sorted, so that when you get into the country, you do not need to wait it out for 6 months before you get a study permit. So it is very important that you consider that time is very, very important. And also the fact that I said that you have to, everything still applies to you as if you are an international student. It's different from us who are PRs or people that are Canadian citizens, because they have a specific portal that they apply to when they want to go to school here. But you as an international student with no with no solid status in terms of whether you are a full you have access to those opportunities, you have to apply as an international student regardless of where you're coming from. So all your tuition, your POF and everything needs to be sorted out, because you would be also presenting that when you apply for the proper visa. So whatever you do, just make sure that you are strategizing and planning to be within the 6 months, because if you stay more than 6 months without extending your visa after the 6 months is also a whole lot of process. You pay to do that, and the officer would see whether you also have a genuine reason for wanting to extend your visa. So that is not even an issue. So just make sure that for you to avoid the risk of overstaying in Canada, you need to make sure that you prepare ahead and you plan appropriately. And in all, before I round up, this is one of the reasons why I really, really love Canada, and it is the fact that it is so flexible, it is so entertaining. You cannot get this kind of opportunity in another country. You go to UK on a visitor's visa and you tell them you want to convert it to a study permit or a work visa. You just go back to your home country and then do all that is needed to be done. So these are some of the advantages that some people try, because it just avail you those opportunities, those pathways to come to Canada. And Canada is always open to dual intent. As long as you're honest and you're open, Canada does not mind whether you have a PR in and you're applying for a study visa, or whether you're even applying for a visitor's visa and a study permit. All of those things can be done together. So that brings me to the end of this video. If you've stayed behind to the end of this video, I say thank you so much for watching. And then if you know anyone that this video is going to be benefiting, I think you can just please share it with those people. And if you have any question, don't forget to drop it in the comment section. I would be watching and I would be replying every single comment. I say thank you so much for today, and I will see you guys back in my next video. Bye.